Hello, YouTube land! Check your clocks, it's amateur hour time. Welcome back to another episode of, or could potentially be the final episode of, Danganronpa 2. In the last episode, we completed the main story. We are actually in the middle of reading this novel called Danganronpa IF, which is a what-if scenario of Mukuro Ikusaba from the first game. So it's basically portraying what if Mukuro was alive, basically. Simply put, what if she was still alive and she was living her life through Hope's Peak, trying to survive, basically. So we got a lot of stuff. One, Makoto is, I think right now he's currently in bed healing because you know how in the beginning of the game, Junko slash Mukuro gets stabbed by a whole bunch of spears. Well, in this story scenario, Makoto told Mukuro to dodge, and she did, but then in the crossfire, Makoto got impaled by the spears himself. So Mukuro set up a little diversion, and basically she snuck out of the gym to go heal Makoto. And then during that, Junko slash Monokuma showed up and I guess like teased her in a way, like just kept teasing her, and then actually cut ties with her. So now Mukuro is now going to go against her in the hopes of giving her more despair, since you know Junko's all about the despair stuff. So I'm down for reading more of this. It's actually really cool, and honestly, it's fun. It's like I said, it's like from last episode, it's like an audiobook. So you can just chill, read along with me, and then just interact, or not interact, but just hang out and chill pretty much as I continue reading. Let's go ahead and jump right into this and have some fun. You know what to do, guys. Leave a like for Danganronpa 2. Leave a like for Mukuro Ikusaba, the Ultimate Soldier, and Danganronpa IF, a what-if book of what if Mukuro was still living during Danganronpa. So, if you like what I said, subscribe. It'll be an honor to have you as part of the Cuckoo crew. I welcome you with open arms, but without further ado, let's continue. Oh yeah, I think I just finished a chapter. I could be wrong. I think this is when she cut off her ties with Mukuro, and then she's like, all right, I'm gonna help these people escape in order to give you more despair. That I remember. Onward. Yep. Okay. So we're back at it again. So I think this is in the hallway now. Over 10 minutes had passed. The sound of the students leaving the gym and making their way to the nurse's office rang throughout the hall. Genocide Jack had continued to dodge Sakura's attacks with her tricky movements. But when Byakuya blurted out, "Enough already, you irritating pervert," Genocide Jack stopped in her tracks.
Oh my. Getting chewed out by my bespectacled Byakuya is making my masochistic side get all tingly. They say the line between sadism and masochism is paper thin, but in my case it's more like a Venn diagram. Words can't explain these hot waves of passion squirming from the top of my head to the tips of my toes.
As she rumbled incoherently about Byakuya, the other students tied her up with a microphone cable from the gym and locked her in her room. Half the students stayed back to keep an eye on her, while the rest left to search the grounds of the school. As soon as the door to the nurse's office opened, Kyoko saw a non-functioning Monokuma with a hole in its chest and the remains of a surveillance camera. It wasn't just in the nurse's office, though. On their way there, the students had seen several destroyed surveillance cameras scattered Monokuma bodies. This was a clear violation of school regulations, but if Mukuro was allied with Monokuma, those regulations wouldn't apply to her anyway. The Monokuma inside the gym was no longer moving, and the students had lost contact with the hacker, Beshiki Madurai. I think that's how you say it. The students assumed that Madurai had taken control of a different Monokuma and went after Mukuro on his own. With that in mind, Kyoko turned and looked inside the nurse's office once again. It was unusually quiet. The beds were empty, but Kyoko could see from the bloodstains that someone had been resting there recently. Looks like they're already gone. Oh, I thought that was Kyoko. That's Mondo. Looks like they've already gone, Mondo remarked, but as he was about to leave, Kyoko spoke up behind him. I'm going to stay here with Chihiro and search for clues.
Huh?
asked Chihiro, her timid eyes widening.
Clues?
Kyoko continued to speak in a calm tone of voice. Yes, there may be some clues in these Monokuma remains. I figured you would be the best candidate for investigating machinery. Sakura spoke up. But isn't that dangerous? Since Sakura could clearly hold her own in a fight with Mukuro, she had joined the other students in searching the school grounds. Kyoko shook her head and replied, I'm sorry to say this, but if things get out of hand, Chihiro and I will just be in your way. I think it's better if we search for clues here instead of doing nothing. Besides, we might be able to use Monokuma's parts to detect any radio broadcasts from the outside world. You certainly have a point. Understood. We'll be exploring this floor for a while. Please shout for us if anything happens. Sakura left the nurse's office. How did she destroy Monokuma like this? Okay, that's Chihiro. I thought it was Kyoko.
How did she destroy Monokuma like this?
As Chihiro cautiously stood over Monokuma's remains, Kyoko started searching through the room. She zeroed in on one of the beds and began studying it intensely. A moment later, Kyoko was satisfied with what she found and let out a small sigh before she spoke. Chihiro, let me apologize to you in advance.
Huh?
I dragged you into this gamble of mine, so if anything happens, run out of the hallway and call for help.
What does that mean?
But instead of answering Chihiro's question, Kyoko started talking to one of the empty beds. Let me say this first. I'm prepared to hear your story. No matter how ridiculous it may sound, I promise not to decide if it's a lie or the truth until after I listen to it in its entirety. Chihiro looked confused. She didn't understand what Kyoko meant at all. The ultimate, lowered her eyes and turned to the ultimate programmer to make a request. Chihiro, does your laptop have a voice recording function, and do you also have a microphone?
Huh? Yeah.
I want you to use that to record everything we're about to hear.
But there's no one here.
As Chihiro wondered to herself, she began connecting Monokuma's parts to her laptop and turned on the record function.
I'm sure we'll pick up every sound in this room now,
said Chihiro, nervously. Satisfied, Kyoko nodded and once again started talking to the empty bed. So what are you gonna do if I told everyone that I found Makoto? When she heard Kyoko say that, Chihiro looked back at her and was surprised by what she saw. At that moment, the ultimate programmer was kneeling on the floor next to Monokuma's remains. From that position, she was able to see it. Of all the beds in the nurse's office, there was one bed in particular that couldn't be seen from the entrance. Underneath that bed lay a limp Makoto. A blood pack was hidden next to the bed and slowly providing Makoto with a transfusion. The contents of the blood pack were clear. Rather than blood, it seemed like some kind of saline solution used in emergency hydration. Though it wouldn't be as effective as an actual blood transfusion, it was enough to keep him from going into shock. Though that was the extent of Chihiro's medical knowledge. He was already surprised that Makoto had been in the nurse's office this whole time. Not only that, but Kyoko wasn't talking to the bed that Makoto was under, which sent chills throughout Chihiro's body. However, there was nobody under the bed that Kyoko was facing. But the moment Chihiro noticed that, a voice rang out from underneath it. As soon as everyone's attention was focused on Makoto, I was planning to take advantage of that opportunity to take someone hostage. As Chihiro cautiously lowered her head until it was nearly touching the floor, she was able to make out who was talking. Surprisingly, the person hiding there was clinging to the frame of the bed. Like a ninja clinging to the ceiling. Presumably, if someone had glanced under the bed quickly, they wouldn't have noticed anybody was there. Though Chihiro had no idea how the person was able to hide under the bed for so long, she could at least understand that their strength was beyond normal human levels. There was no question that the person hiding under the bed was Mukuro Ikusaba. So she was just chilling there. Like, she was hiding under the bed frame, like, clinging onto it like a ninja on a ceiling. That's cool, actually. She was chilling.
But you pretended not to notice. Why?
Mukuro's voice was as cold as ice, but Kyoko didn't even flinch as she responded.
Because I wanted to hear your side of the story. I knew you were hiding under that bed.
Compared to the others, the frame was slightly more pronounced. Chihiro tried comparing the beds to see if this was true, but she couldn't tell the difference at all. Only Kyoko's natural observation skills could let her see something like that. Mukuro seemed to come to a similar conclusion and appeared from under the bed without making a sound. Her face was stoic and cold, compared to the bomb inside Monokuma. Chihiro thought she was even more terrifying. However, Mukuro ignored Chihiro and shifted her gaze at Kyoko. She leaned against the wall and let her arms fall to her sides as she threw out another question.
Why do you want to hear what I have to say?
Kyoko thought about this simple question for a while, as if she were searching within her own heart for the answer.
If I have to provide an answer, it's because I wish to remain neutral.
Kyoko quietly looked down.
I'm currently missing most of my memories. I don't know who I am or what talent I had to be accepted into this school.
She could hear Chihiro gasp behind her, but Kyoko didn't mind and continued.
But even so, I believe I should listen to what you have to say. Regardless of whether you're good or evil, I must hear all the facts in order to know the truth. Good and evil don't matter. I'll come to a conclusion based on what I see and hear. I think that's the methodology that's been instilled into me.
I see. I completely forgot you were like that, Kyoko.
Before I listen to what you have to say, I'd like to ask you one question first.
What is it? Mukuro's reply was completely emotionless. Kyoko presented her question as if she were asking it of herself as well.
What was my talent that allowed me to attend this academy?
The answer to that question was simple. Kyoko, you're the ultimate detective. That answer marked a turning point for both girls.
Thank you.
I have a better understanding of the situation now. Kyoko slowly raised her head and presented a theory.
If my memory loss wasn't just a coincidence, then your group has the ability to erase people's memories. With that in mind, if we take into consideration the situation that unfolded in the gym earlier, I can only come to one possibility.
Possibility?
Yes. What you said to Byakuya when he thought you were taking Toko hostage. You claimed that they met 2 years ago. It's possible that might actually be true. The fact that Makoto called out Mukuro's name. The things that Mukuro confirmed and denied. Genocide Jack's outlandish claims. These key factors that Kyoko noted using her special observation skills were converging in her mind to form one answer. It's possible that Byakuya and Toko's memories were also erased, like mine, but I don't think their circumstances are quite the same as mine. But if our memories can be controlled so freely, it calls into question whether the day Monokuma appeared was really the same day we entered the academy. Like you said, it's possible that we've known Toko Fukawa for the last 2 years.
What do you mean? Chihiro cried. Oh, that's Chihiro saying that.
What do you mean?
Chihiro cried, still working on connecting her laptop to Monokuma's parts. Kyoko continued, speaking to both Chihiro and Mukuro.
We thought we were knocked unconscious with sleeping gas the moment we arrived at this school. But it's possible that we were simply made to think that's what happened. For example, we may have already spent the last 2 years at Hope's Peak Academy and our memories of that time were completely erased. It's even possible that we weren't even ultimates at all, just random people who have been implanted with 16 years worth of false memories.
Though Kyoko's claim sounded ridiculous, her face was completely serious. She looked up at Mukuro once again.
Which means, I'm considering the possibility that your crazy story is actually the truth.
Kyoko's declaration filled the room with silence. But she didn't let that silence overwhelm her. Kyoko cut through it with her own words. Without evidence, all I can do is make hypotheses. That's why I want to hear what you have to say, Mukuro. I have no intention of blindly believing what you're going to say, or what that self-proclaimed hacker who took over Monokuma said. She paused and lowered her eyes again, then declared with powerful determination. Even so, I intend to come to a conclusion as fairly and objectively as I can. But I can only do that if you trust me and tell the truth. Yoko's conviction was clear from her voice. Mukuro's eyes narrowed slightly, and a tapestry of emotions flashed across her face as she looked toward Kyoko. But when she opened her mouth, her expression and voice were completely devoid of emotion. That's right. I completely forgot. We're like that. Mukuro repeated this to herself softly, then faced Kyoko and declared. That must be why Junko took care to erase more of your memories compared to the others. Very well. I'll tell you everything. And after Mukuro placed Makoto back onto the bed, she began to mechanically tell a story. The story of a girl who wanted to fill the world with despair. A girl who felt only truly happy when she was filled with despair herself. A plan for despair that began 2 years ago, or perhaps even earlier than that. How the world was currently ruled by despair itself. Mukuro provided a brief summary of everything she knew about the plan. That's why it sounded even more outrageous than Kyoko had expected. And through her story, Kyoko was able to learn the truth about herself. Who she is, and why she came to the Academy. The fate of the Academy's real headmaster. Kyoko's father. As she listened to Mukuro's story, Kyoko remained silent the whole time. Her face went blank when she learned her father had died. Perhaps her memory loss and the absurdity of the situation helped lessen the impact somewhat. But there was no guarantee Kyoko would even believe her story. After Mukuro finished speaking, Kyoko stayed silent. With her unrivaled mental prowess, she was able to listen to Mukuro's story without interrupting her or dismissing it as nonsense. Mukuro continued. You don't have to believe me. After all, any pictures that could prove my story are with Junko. All I can do is talk. After she said that, Mukuro silently walked toward the entrance to the nurse's office. When she arrived at the door, she spoke again without looking back. But even if you don't believe me, you still listen to everything I had to say. So, Kyoko, Chihiro, thank you. After apologizing in such a strange tone of voice, she turned to the bed where Makoto lay, breathing weakly. Make sure Makoto stays rested. When he wakes up, make sure you give him some sports drinks from the dining hall or supply room to drink. Please. Of course, but... What are you gonna do now? Asked Kyoko. Mukuro straightened herself up. Despair. I need to make Junko feel despair. Mukuro continued mumbling to herself as she opened the door. Nothing else I can do. No, there is something you can do. Mukuro stopped walking as Kyoko spoke firmly. Regardless of whether Monokuma is really Junko Enoshima or Bishiki Madurai, if you're dealing with him, we won't be able to lay a finger on Makoto. I don't fully trust you, but if you're really concerned for Makoto's life, I'm willing to work with you. Unlike Bishiki, who've probably abandoned him already. Right? Sorry. I don't really work well with others. Mukuro looked away, then bowed her head as she left the nurse's office. But, do my best. The doors closed and Mukuro was gone. I'm sorry for involving you in something so dangerous, Chihiro. As she continued to organize the vast amount of information that Mukuro gave her, Kyoko turned to Chihiro, who was still working on Monokuma. As she trembled with fear, Chihiro slowly looked back at Kyoko.
Kyoko? About what Mukuro said just now.
Chihiro's face turned pale as she struggled with her words, and Kyoko tried to calm her down.
We can't determine if anything she told us was true or not.
That's Kyoko. We can't determine if anything she told us was true or not. There's no need to be afraid. But Chihiro shook her head and returned to looking at her laptop.
I think he's telling the truth.
What are you basing that on?
Well, it looks like Monokuma is really being controlled from the outside.
Part of Monokuma's system had been connected to Chihiro's laptop, and she was analyzing the data within its control system. And it was then that the ultimate programmer noticed something unusual about it.
This control program. I thought it would be another year before the system became fully operational.
Chihiro started trembling so much that she was unable to continue speaking. We can't confirm that, said Kyoko, proposing another possibility to avoid jumping to conclusions. It's possible that a similar program was being developed in secret. But Chihiro adamantly shook her head and said,
No, that's not it. It just looks really familiar to me.
Kyoko looked over to Chihiro's trembling shoulders to peer at the screen. That's when she noticed. This program. Chihiro, did you create this? All the ultimate programmer could do was nod weakly. Dang, alright. Yeah, it just looked familiar because it was Chihiro's own creation. That's wild. First floor, main hall. Mukuro continued moving forward and was fortunate enough to not encounter Sakura or Mondo. With no interference from anyone, she made her way to a hall as large as the gym and stood before the sealed main entrance. Suddenly, Monokuma popped out from the shadows to block her path. Within this hall that resembled a nuclear bomb shelter, replete with all manner of heavy weaponry, Monokuma's silhouette was conspicuously out of place here. His laughter rang out throughout the room as he wiggled his body from side to side.
What were you doing at the nurse's office? Did you eliminate your rival for Makoto's affections? Or did you help play matchmaker instead? Either way, don't you think it's kind of adorable to put Makoto and Kyoko in this kind of situation together? If this were a suspense film, those two would be the last couple standing. But if this were a horror film, they just die anyway. The killer was alive all along. Splat goes the blood. Plop goes the meat. I'm a huge fan of endings where the characters think they're gonna live, but they're really headed to a final destination. Wait, what the hell's a detonation? What does that even mean?
Despite Monokuma's angry complaints, Mukuro remained unperturbed. He continued to stare icy daggers at Monokuma as if she were waiting for him to finish speaking.
Well, anyway, I'm just so sad right now. A regulation-breaking delinquent is disrupting the harmony of this peaceful academy. I can't even keep one of my students from running wild. Time to say goodbye to your incompetent headmaster. I'm gonna use Monokuma Evolution to become a big Magnum headmaster and mold you into a decent student.
As soon as he said that, Monokuma extended his claws and waddled toward Mukuro.
So if I'm gonna mold you, then I gotta kill you first!
Right as he finished speaking, Monokuma suddenly charged at Mukuro like a spiked volleyball. But Mukuro was faster and dodged Monokuma's attack. She jumped back, keeping her distance from Monokuma just in case his claws could extend even longer. Just then, a shadowy figure appeared next to her. Mukuro twisted her body to its limits and just narrowly evaded the figure's attack. When she landed on the floor, she immediately saw.
So what does the immortal killer want anyway? Are you gonna tell the others the truth and escape with them? Even though you know what the outside world is like right now?
Two Monokumas were speaking to Mukuro in unison.
Honestly, I don't mind if you do that. I can just imagine the look on everyone's face when they discover the truth. It fills me with such heart-throbbing excitement.
The two Monokumas continued to speak in stereo sound.
You said you destroyed my plans, but there's no happy ending waiting for you, no matter which route you take. And you only have yourself to blame for that. Don't tell me you thought they'd be grateful to you. Even if you guys escape here, do you think they'll still forgive you when they get a whiff of that nasty air outside? Some of them might prefer to stay in the school, and some of them might resent you for being kind and showing them the truth. But then again, this is all your fault anyway, so it doesn't really matter what they think of you. Monokuma made a little mistake. Right?
That's narrator. Okay. Despite facing down two Monokumas, Mukuro's expression didn't waver. She understood that controlling two Monokumas simultaneously was a piece of cake for Junko. Mukuro drew an arm-length metal bar from seemingly nowhere and readied herself. It was the remains of the IV stand from the nurse's office sharpened into a pointed weapon. With her weapon in hand, Mukuro responded in a cold, mechanical tone. That's fine. I'm already used to that. None of the fear she felt when Monokuma suggested that Makoto would blame her appeared on her face. Her path was clear to her now, and she calmly issued her demand to Monokuma. Junko, open the gates. The shock of such a straightforward demand left both Monokumas momentarily speechless, but soon they replied.
Huh? Why?
So we can all leave together. Another straightforward answer. Both Monokumas faced each other and began gesturing as they were whispering to one another. Mukuro knew their movements were intended to mock her. Unmoved, she continued to speak to Junko directly. I think they'll understand if I show them the outside world. And then they'll stop doubting Makoto.
You always find new ways to disappoint me, Mukuro. Did you forget why the school has an air filtration system? It's true that the air outside is polluted, but I don't think it'll kill us immediately.
Oh, that's... No, okay, yeah, that's Mukuro, not Monokuma. It's true that the air outside is polluted, but I don't think that'll kill us immediately. Besides, it's better than being trapped in the school and forced to kill each other.
How can you be sure the others will go along with you? You know what I mean, right? Before the former headmaster got turned into space dust, he interviewed the others and they all agreed that they wanted to stay in the school. That was before their memories had ever been erased. Do you really want to betray their wishes?
Mukuro blinked and slowly stepped forward. I don't really care about their feelings.
Huh?
You're all I need, Junko. So don't worry. I'm always watching out for you. I'm going to make sure you feel despair, and I'm going to make Makoto and the others happy. If you want to revel in your own despair that badly, then I'll trust the hope Makoto gave me and take my chances with them instead of you. Mukuro's brief but powerful words caused the Monokumas to turn to talk to each other again.
Oh my, this doesn't look good at all, Monokuma, eh? This child doesn't realize her own hypocrisy. She's so disappointing that she's starting to reach critical mass, right, Monokuma B?
The two Monokumas looked at Mukuro, who seemed ready to destroy them, and said,
What do you think, Monokuma C?
Mukuro was taken aback by their question, but her instinct suddenly kicked in and she immediately dodged away. At that moment, a third Monokuma, claws extended, passed by where her head had been previously. This new Monokuma unit landed with several spins and faced Mukuro, who had clung to the remains of a surveillance camera still attached to the ceiling.
I agree with you both, A and B.
The three Monokumas lined themselves up. To the students locked inside the academy, this sight would have been akin to a nightmare.
Right on!
The three units began speaking in perfect harmony as their 6 eyes looked up at Mukuro. Suddenly, they each jumped away in 3 separate directions and kicked off one of the walls. The path of each unit's triangular attack all converged on a single point, Mukuro, who was still clinging to the ceiling. She was surrounded by razor-sharp claws coming at her from different directions. But the situation wasn't even a nightmare to Mukuro. Compared to the time she fended off 3 assassins who invaded her camp one night back when she was still a member of Fenrir, this was nothing. This thought crossed Mukuro's mind as she dangled from the ceiling with one hand and thrashed her limbs around like a tornado. Intercepted by this move, the Monokumas fell to the floor with a loud crash. Mukuro landed on the ground and chased after one of them, brandishing her metal bar. Suddenly, she stopped moving and took a huge leap back. One of the Monokumas exploded with a deafening roar. He had detonated the bomb inside of himself in an attempt to take Mukuro down with him. But thanks to her honed battlefield instincts, Mukuro managed to avoid the explosion. She looked toward the hallway, expecting the explosion to have attracted the attention of Sakura and the others. But she didn't hear any footsteps approaching. Monokuma's voice rang from within the dense smoke.
You don't have to worry. I already told the other students to assemble in the cafeteria. They were eager to follow my orders after I told them I disarmed the poison gas and that a special police unit was coming to get them. I'm pretty sure Kyoko and the others are all in the cafeteria by now. I'm sure Makoto's with them too. I doubt Sakura will get too rough with him, but I'm sure Byakuya will torture Makoto once he wakes up. I could just imagine him rubbing salt and pouring soy sauce into his open wounds. Oh man, I'm getting all hot and bothered right now.
As she listened to Monokuma's overlapping voices, Mukuro tilted her head slightly and asked, I'm pretty sure they're going to find out that you lied about that special police unit. Are you really okay with that?
No worries. Once I've dealt with you, I don't care at all if they find out I was lying. You still don't get it? You're such a disappointment.
It suddenly dawned on Mukuro. Not the reason why Monokuma didn't care if the students found out he lied, but rather that the voices of the Monokumas in the smoke were gradually increasing in number. Yeah, I've noticed that too. Like the quotation marks are increasing, so there's 5 Monokumas in the smoke right now. As the smoke started to clear, the shadows of 3 Monokumas appeared. The one that exploded couldn't have revived, so a new one must have come and take its place. But there's no way Mukuro only heard 3 Monokumas talking just now. As if to prove her hearing had been accurate, the Monokumas suddenly made their move. The 3 Monokumas bent over and began twirling their upper bodies. From behind them, new Monokumas emerged, like after images brought to life. This second row of Monokumas mimicked the earlier ones with only 1 frame of delay, revealing even more Monokumas behind them. Eventually, Mukuro realized that there were 3 rows containing 10 Monokumas each.
Did you know this is called a circle dance?
Monokuma's 30 voices spoke in perfect harmony as they divulged information that had nothing to do with the current situation. Mukuro already knew that multiple Monokumas were positioned throughout the academy, but only Junko knew how many Monokumas actually existed. Mukuro had no way of knowing if these 30 Monokumas were part of a larger contingent. The flock of 2-tone teddy bears continued to twirl around. Wow, what a heck of a tongue twister. The flock of the 2-tone teddy bears continued to twirl around. Say that 5 times fast. The flock of 2-tone teddy bears continued to twirl around. Mukuro felt like she was being bombarded with hypnotic images. But faced with this abnormal sight, the ultimate soldier remained calm and maintained her focus. She was nothing like the girl who had panicked earlier in the gym when Mukuro was impaled. As she stood before 30 emissaries of despair, she slowed her breathing and allowed her heart rate to accelerate. It was instinct, not fear or panic, that sent her blood racing through her body, speeding up the reaction time of her cells. As her senses sharpened, the Monokumas began speaking to her again.
Don't worry, I'll make sure Mukuro doesn't die. As long as everyone lives, I can reset their memories as many times as I want. That's right. All your effort, hope, dreams, and determination are going right in the garbage heap.
The Monokumas took turns speaking in groups of 10. As if the mastermind controlling the Monokumas wanted to show off her ability to manipulate them. However, the ultimate soldier knew what the true purpose behind this all was. She strained her ears to her limit and noticed a certain sound hidden among the Monokuma's voices. Mukuro's face remained perfectly still as she kicked off the floor. The moment she moved to the side, a roaring sound shook the entrance hall. The ceiling-mounted turrets in the front of the gate started raining bullets down on Mukuro. The Monokumas were just the mastermind's decoy while she tried to blow her away. Yeah, she tried to distract her by talking so she could mount up the turrets on the door to shoot her. That's actually very clever. As if further trapping her, the Monokumas charged at Mukuro through the storm of bullets. Mukuro guessed that the mastermind programmed their movements in advance so they wouldn't get hit by a single bullet. She ran for the gates, evading waves of bullets and claws every step of the way. Programming 30 Monokumas in 2 turrets while also predicting Mukuro's escape route. This would be considered impossible for anyone, but Mukuro knew it was possible for Junko. As Ultimate Despair, she possessed despair-inducing abilities that surpassed the capabilities of any normal human. Her display of power was only filling Mukuro with despair. Despair. The scene playing out in front of Mukuro was brimming with despair. The adorably deadly Monokumas laughed and danced like reapers as bullets whizzed through the air. It was despair to the point of absurdity, and it was all from Mukuro. But in the presence of such despair, Mukuro felt a strange serenity. For me? Junko's doing all this? For me? Junko, are you watching me right now? In the end, perhaps Mukuro really was the disappointment. She clenched her fists. Junko, thank you. The sound of gunfire overshadowed her whisper, and Mukuro fell completely silent. As a member of Ultimate Despair, Mukuro's heart was filled with joy. Though she was filled with emotion, her eyes had lost their sparkle. Silence filled the air. Even the gunfire from the turret seemed to stop for a moment. But that was only an illusion to the one controlling Monokuma. Something strong enough to silence the gunfire and avoid being picked up by the sensors spread through the school, with Mukuro at the center. I'll make sure I do this right. With that final thought, she closed her mouth and turned off her emotions. As she ran through the waves of scorching bullets, the air around her began to grow colder. As this coolness spread into her heart, it began to beat in a mechanical fashion. Several seconds later, Mukuro's body and mind melted together and became one with her surroundings. Her temperature now dominated the battlefield. Despair, bullets, and Monokumas filled the area. Mukuro predicted their movements and jumped into the air without any hesitation. One of the Monokumas jumped at her, but she avoided his attack, kicked his body, and launched herself in midair. Bullets pierced through the space Mukuro was previously occupying, striking the falling Monokuma right through its eternal bomb. The impact of the bullet caused it to explode, sending fiery Monokuma parts everywhere. As she rode the blast wave, Mukuro balanced herself in midair as she kicked away 3 Monokumas that leapt after her. She moved so gracefully that she was practically flying. In contrast, the Monokumas threw themselves into the path of oncoming bullets, exploding one after the other. Some of them exploded near the main entrance, but their blasts didn't even leave a scratch. With full control of the entrance hall, Mukuro evaded bullets and confirmed that the bombs inside Monokuma weren't enough to destroy the door. but she refused to stop. Mukuro needed to get information on what she must do to escape the academy. She had no desire to kill Junko. Mukuro wanted to fill Junko with despair by instilling hope into the future of Makoto and the other students. That was Mukuro's ultimate goal. Get information. In contrast to her determination, her mouth stayed shut. But this did not mean Mukuro was currently speaking to Junko. This situation, this battle of death and destruction, was a conversation of sorts for Mukuro. All she knew how to do was fight. She thought she wasn't interested in anything else. She thought she didn't need anything else. All Mukuro needed was to be a sword to fulfill her sister's desire for despair. That purpose alone was the crew of her existence, and she lived her entire life convincing herself that she couldn't do anything else. That's why power was like a language to Mukuro. A battle to the death revealed more about her heart than mere words ever could. Her words were in the wind of savagery that blows across the battlefield, uprooting others who also speak the language of violence. This was true even against her sister. When Junko would berate her sister, Mukuro couldn't talk back. All she could do was cower and apologize profusely. But it's different now. For the first time, Junko was using a language her sister actually recognized. The child of despair who tore the world apart was speaking to her sister with the language of power. Mukuro's heart filled with joy. For that reason, she strengthened her focus on her conversation with Junko, and that emotion began to gradually disappear. On this frigid battlefield, Mukuro continued her heated conversation. Endless rounds of despair fired from the school turrets, but Mukuro's words intercepted every last violent shot that threatened to shatter her body and mind in half. She quickly realized that the Monokumas hadn't decreased in number at all, no matter how many she kept destroying. Not only that, she noticed that more Monokumas have been joining the fray until there were nearly 50 for them for Mukuro to fight. But Mukuro's resolve wouldn't break so easily. As she continued to wield her power, her heart began to fill with something that was neither hope nor despair. She learned despair from being abandoned by Junko, and she learned hope from her acts of violence. For Mukuro, who had no interest in this world, this small space in front of the gate was a reflection of her life, a representation of her perfect world. This disappointing girl, filled with endless disappointment, who knew of no other way to live, continued her lonely dance. She surrendered herself to the rhythm of despair which accompanies the music of hope. That was very beautiful. I'm not gonna lie, that was a beautiful, description. The rhythm of despair to the music of hope. That's a good line. That's a real good line. Computer room's innermost area, Monokuma's room. How much time had passed? The surveillance cameras at the gates were capturing footage of countless Monokumas falling at the hands of a child who fought like a raging demon. The Monokumas bolstered their numbers, and now 100 of them were trying to sink their claws into Mukuro. Most of them were running on autopilot, reacting to her movements based on prior information they had received in advance. But despite standing before hundreds of mechanical adversaries, Mukuro's face showed no fear. She hadn't sustained a single injury, giving her a presence that was nearly divine to behold. Though Sakura Ogami was powerful enough to injure her arm, Mukuro in her current state could potentially fight Sakura to a draw now, without relying on firearms. She took complete control of the battlefield, taking in her surroundings as they were a part of herself. She dodged attacks from the rear as though she had eyes on the back of her head, and stabbed through Monokuma's weak points with a metal bar. No matter where the attacks came from, Mukuro deflected them as if her skin were covered in eyes. Describing her as ultimate no longer did her justice. Mukuro had transcended the boundaries of humanity and became a pure killing machine. But despite that, even though she understood the ludicrous power of her sister possessed, Junko was not afraid. She felt not one iota of fear. After all Junko can feel is despair. She even started to admire her sister's attempt to fill her with despair, but that sentiment quickly filled Junko with an orgiastic ecstasy of despair. I think that's how you say it, right? Orgiastic? Junko knew. She knew that Mukuro was neither hope nor despair. He was just a phenomenon. A disappointing girl who no longer understood herself, who only knew how to be violent because it was all she could believe in anymore. Mukuro had become an avatar of destruction beyond that of any military force. She couldn't even be considered a soldier anymore. She was a natural disaster, like a typhoon or a tornado. Or perhaps, like gravity, she was now a fundamental force of the universe that only existed to bring despair to Junko. The mastermind enjoyed watching her sister go all out. If Mukuro destroyed everything and ruined her life, Junko would still be confronted by the despair. She could just go right ahead and overpower her. Junko considered this for a few seconds until a familiar, hopeless habit reared its head. Her habit of getting so bored that it made her sick. The girl who had been grinning as she watched the screen now bore a look of calm stoicism, and she reached for the microphone connected to Monokuma's speakers. Mukuro was no longer human anymore, but Junko knew how to bring her back. It was a simple feeling, really, and with that hopeless feeling for Mukuro in mind, the mastermind said just one word. Mukuro. Dang, just all it took was her saying her name. All it took was saying her name to snap her out of her state. In front of the main entrance. Mukuro. That voice. It was calling her name. Instead of using Monokuma's voice filter, Junko's natural voice was coming out of a Monokuma unit. That's all it took. With one word, Mukuro Ikusaba stopped being a force of nature and became a person again. Monokuma would not miss this opportunity. As if moving to the beat of Mukuro's shaking heart, a torrent of claws leapt to attack her. But Mukuro trusted her instincts and twisted her entire body to fend off the attacks, leaving her with only a few scrapes here and there. But the despair wasn't over yet. The ultimate despair didn't waste any time making her next move. Mukuro, watch out! Huh? As soon as Mukuro heard that voice, her mind went completely blank. There was no mistaking it. That was Makoto's scream. The scream that saved her from the spears of Gungnir and changed her destiny. No, that's wrong. It took her a tenth of a second to realize that that voice was just a sound clip that Junko had replayed. But it was more than enough time to drag Mukuro, who had regained her humanity, into despair. Right when she recovered from a moment of shock, Monokuma appeared behind her and roundhouse kicked her in the temple. She twisted her head to roll with the blow, but at that moment a different Monokuma attacked her from the opposite side with a headbutt. And as soon as Mukuro dodged that attack, 3 Monokumas launched simultaneous drop kicks and knocked her to the ground. Ugh. The fact that they weren't using their claws meant that they weren't trying to kill Mukuro right away. Before she could stand up again, dozens of Monokumas waiting for her on the floor climbed on top of Mukuro and pinned her limbs. One of the Monokumas waddled over to Mukuro as she lay face down on the floor and laughed.
A pretty girl getting pinned by all these me's. I wonder if I should feel more excited about this. Don't make that face. If I wanted to kill you, I'd just pump you full of bullets right now. But I don't think the audience is watching this on TV would like that ending very much. I need to make sure I do it the right way this time.
What are you planning on doing to me? Mukuro asked in her emotionless voice. Monokuma guffawed and answered.
Nothing. I'm just gonna stick to the original plan and make you play the killing game at this school. I'll erase everyone's memories again, and I'll just make them redo the introduction and the entrance ceremony again.
In typical Monokuma fashion, he leaned his face toward Mukuro.
But it'd be boring if we had to redo everything. Maybe this time I'll have you participate as Mukuro Ikusaba. I'll take away even more of your memories like I did to that irritating detective girl. You'll just be a poor little girl with no memory at all.
As Monokuma talked and wiggled his body from side to side, the other Monokumas danced and twirled around. Amid this fantastical scene, Monokuma continued to describe his hopeless plan in a nonchalant manner. At first, you'll be the girl with amnesia, and everyone will feel so sorry for you. But as they unravel the mystery of this academy, they'll find out who you really are. It's exciting to think how they'll treat you when that happens. Knowing you, you'll probably kill someone purely on instinct. Maybe I should rethink my rules about self-defense. Can't. Her memories would be erased. There was nothing she could do about her classmates hating her. But losing even her childhood memories would mean her connection to Junko would be severed as well. Even if Mukuro had no interest in the world, that was unbearable even for her. I've heard of New Game Plus before, but this is the first time I'll get to see a New Game Minus. Did I tie you up for fun? Or maybe we should make this game even more masochistic. Forget hard mode, very hard mode, and inferno mode. Why don't you skip ahead to impossible mode? Maybe I'll erase your memories after I drag you on a motorcycle, pummel you with 1,000 baseballs, burn you at the stake, and crush you with an excavator. Mukuro knew what Monokuma was talking about. He was describing the tools they had prepared for the various executions they had planned for the students. After everyone reintroduces themselves, they'll walk around the school grounds and eventually find a flat-chested girl with amnesia, covered in bandages with Fenrir's tattoo on her right hand. I bet a certain fan base might get off on that. If this were a game, that would increase sales by 500%. The Monokuma sounded like he was joking. Everything he said was deadly serious. As evidence, Mukuro heard a rumbling sound off in the distance. Now then, your sweet ride is on its way! Based on that engine's noise, Mukuro surmised that it was the large motorcycle that was supposed to be used for one of the executions. I took the time to bring this all the way from the punishment room, so you better be grateful! The sound of the roaring engine grew louder and louder, like the approaching footsteps of death. Mukuro wondered how Monokuma would drive it with such tiny arms and legs, but then she remembered that she was dealing with an ultimate despair. Junko would make the impossible possible just to bring out despair. A despair that went hand in hand with Mukuro's fate. Did I fail? I couldn't fill Junko with despair? I couldn't save Makoto and the others? Questions raced through Mukuro's mind, but she wasn't able to answer them. There's no way she could have answered them so easily. After all, she was still alive. The sound of the motorcycle grew closer and closer, as if it was threatening to break Mukuro's spirit. Suddenly, Monokuma stopped moving. The other Monokumas continued doing their automatic movements. As this strange event unfolded, Mukuro noticed something. The motorcycle had suddenly gone quiet. After a few seconds, the engine exploded to life and began to approach even faster than before. Only a few seconds later, what appeared in front of the main entrance was an enormous motorcycle that plowed through the groups of Monokumas like a predator hunting its prey. The rider of this motorcycle was none other than Mondo Owada. Mukuro and Monokuma were both visibly shocked by this turn of events. Instead of addressing them, Mondo accelerated the motorcycle he stole from Monokuma directly toward Mukuro. Just before his front tire touched Mukuro, he popped the reverse wheelie and turned the entire motorcycle around. The back wheel swept over Mukuro's back, knocking away all the Monokumas that were pinning her. Hey, can you stand? Mondo asked, and begrudgingly offered his hand to Mukuro. Confused, Mukuro took his hand and stood up. What are you doing, Mondo? I was so close. One of the Monokuma— I thought it was Mukuro. What are you
doing, Mondo? I was so close!
One of the Monokumas protested. Not in his normal voice, but as the hacker. Oh, I don't know his voice. I don't know who that even is. Not in his normal voice, but as the hacker, Bashiki Madurai. Oh yeah, you're Bashiki or whatever, right?
That's right. Why are you helping a terrorist?
I ain't bragging about this or anything, but I have no clue if you or this girl is lying. The veins in his temple began to bulge, and his cheeks flushed with anger as Mondo said. But still, I ain't the type to just stand around while some idiot gangs up on a girl.
What do you say? Get a hold of yourself. You must be experiencing Stockholm Syndrome. You deluded yourself into thinking you're friends with the criminal who's taken you hostage.
Monokuma tried to explain to Mondo, but he ignored him, took Mukuro's hand, and pulled her onto the back of the motorcycle. Oh, shut the fuck up. I don't know nothing about Stockholms or syndromes, but don't go acting like you can boss me around. As Mondo shouted, he revved the motorcycle as he was using it to punctuate his words. The ceiling-mounted turrets began moving, but the two disappeared before the turrets could take aim at the motorcycle. As they zoomed through the hallway, countless Monokumas chased after them, waving their claws wildly through the air. Why? Asked Mukuro. Huh? Shouted Mondo. His voice was even louder than the sound of the engine. Don't get the wrong idea. I don't trust you at all. His lowered his voice slightly, as if he were whispering to himself. But still, I don't know why I felt like I could trust what he said. He? Inquired Mukuro. But there was no time for questions. The unit leading the Monokumas chasing after the motorcycle had almost caught up to them. And then, like the enormous maw of some fearsome creature, they brandished their claws in perfect unison. At that moment, the motorcycle zoomed by a certain girl. A girl whose fighting ability surpasses that of any normal human. The strongest girl on Earth. With a fighting spirit that defied comprehension, the ultimate martial artist kicked off the floor. A sound even louder than the motorcycle's engine filled the room. When Mukuro looked back, she saw Sakura landing on the floor, sending the pack of Monokumas flying several meters away. Sakura? As she heard Mukuro mumble her name, Sakura didn't acknowledge it. Like a statue of a fearsome god king, she calmed her breathing as she stood before the pack of Monokumas, ready for battle. Your pursuit methods seem unbecoming for one who claims to be the ultimate hacker. An overpowering aura seeped from her skin, and her skin shimmered in intense heat began to fill the hallway. Unlike the power of Mukuro's sheer violence, this was the power of martial arts. Mukuro froze the air around her and time along with it, but Sakura was generating enough heat to boil space itself as she stood before the Monokumas. With that heat stinging her back, Mukuro looked ahead. Ifumi and Chihiro were cautiously peeking from behind the door leading to the dorms, while Aoi and Taka kept watch from inside the building. After passing them by, Mondo slowed down the motorcycle as he reached the front of the cafeteria and turned to a complete stop. The other students looked warily at Mukuro. But among these students, Mukuro noticed two people who weren't regarding with her suspicion. One was Kyoko, who seemed to be studying the situation. The other one was a skinny boy who was leaning against Kyoko's shoulder. Makoto? Mukuro's lips began to tremble as she sat on the back of the motorcycle. Ignoring the pain coursing through his body, Makoto smiled at Mukuro and repeated what he said to her earlier. I'm glad you're safe, Mukuro. Unfortunately, Mukuro was unable to realize her hope of filling her little sister with despair. Instead, she had successfully planted the seeds of hope into her fellow students. Aww, they reunited. She's feeling good finally. Let's keep going. Makoto had barely regained consciousness while Mukuro was fighting the horde of Monokumas at the main entrance. When he woke up, he did something extremely simple. He talked about his memories. Most of the students were still skeptical even after listening to Mukuro's recorded confession on Chihiro's laptop. Obviously, they were still not entirely convinced at first when Makoto woke up, but after Sakura asked him a certain question, the ambience completely changed.
And beyond the walls of this school, the world is completely destroyed? You're saying there's no one else alive?
Makoto slowly sat up to answer Sakura's meek question.
Don't worry. I'm sure Kenichiro is still safe. I'm sure he'll still keep his promise to you.
Sakura gasped. Kenichiro was the only man she couldn't defeat, a man who promised her a rematch and made her one other promise as well.
How do you know that name? How do you know about that promise? Because you told me. No.
Makoto slowly corrected himself.
You told all of us.
Sakura was silent after hearing those words. But she then faced the other students and spoke in a loud, clear voice.
I'm going to trust Makoto.
Sakura? Though Aoi was shocked, Sakura continued to speak with determination.
What Makoto just said is something I kept locked away inside my memories. In fact, I was planning to keep that a secret until the day I died. But if I shared that secret, it means there was once a strong bond between Makoto, myself, and with my fellow students as well.
Makoto continued to talk in a gentle tone. Though it couldn't have been good for his health, he continued to slowly talk about the memories that the other students no longer had.
Why do you know about the story I'm planning to write?
Are you a specialist Nen user who can predict the— Oh, I think that's Hiro.
Are you a specialist Nen user who can predict the future?
You already finished that Historia, Fumi. Nope, that's a Fumi the whole thing.
Why do you know about a story I'm planning to write? Are you a specialist Nen user who can predict the future?
You already finished that story, Hifumi. You had me help you with inking.
What? But wait a sec.
Okay, now I know that's Hiro.
What? Wait a sec. How do you know I extorted money from that girl related to the Kuzuryu clan?
Because you even tried to sell my organs to them. Yeah, that's Hiro. Hiro extorted money from Fuyuhiko's people. And he went into hiding and he tried to get Makoto to sell his identity and even his organs to get off the hook. I love Hiro. His wounds were excruciating. But even so, Makoto kept smiling and talking about their lives together, as if it was his duty to do so now that he had regained his memories. As the other students listened to him, they slowly began to realize something. The vivid accounts he was providing couldn't be explained as just passing knowledge. Clearly, some kind of bond between them at all had been erased. Only Byakuya remained cynical. There's no way I would have grown any closer to you. It's likely that you're all secretly working together. Though Byakuya was still hostile toward Makoto's recollection of their memories, for the time being, he determined that Makoto wasn't actually a terrorist. Mukuro had brought enough time for Makoto to wake up and share his memories with the others. Even if she hadn't intended to do that, it was still a small sliver of hope that she grasped tightly. Oh, okay, so as Mukuro was fighting in the entrance hall, she was technically buying time for Makoto to tell everyone what he was remembering. And now, as she looked at the boy who had smiled at her, Mukuro didn't know what to say. She couldn't think of anything to say at all. The battle was over, and Mukuro was now back to being a disappointing girl. She turned away from everyone's faces and apologetically climbed off the back of the motorcycle. but Makoto saw her and slowly opened his mouth to say,
"Thank you, Mukuro. You saved my life."
Makoto gave her words of sincere gratitude between his weak breaths. Mukuro couldn't bring herself to look at him as she mumbled to herself.
"Why?" "Huh?" "If Kyoko told you, you already know what I did, right?"
After regaining his memories and learning the truth, Makoto should have been nothing but a hated traitor to him. Oh, Mukuro should have been nothing but a hated traitor to him. Why would he smile at someone like her? Mukuro kept her head down. Makoto smiled as if he was unsure how to respond and said,
"Well, I guess you're right. But you also saved my life many times during these past 2 years, and..."
Makoto took a deep, quiet breath and smiled at Mukuro again.
"You're my friend. We all spent time with each other. It would be great if you could look for a different path, not despair. And if there's any way I can help you, I will."
Do you really think I can walk another path at this point?
"I don't know what you can do, or even what I can do. But I think it's more important to look for that path instead of actually finding it."
Was this intentional or a coincidence? Just before he regained his memories, Makoto had said something similar to Mukuro when he spoke to them in the nurse's office as Junko. Regardless of whether he lost his memories or regained them, those words revealed Makoto's true character. As Mukuro confirmed that to herself, Makoto blurted out something that was almost too trusting.
"It is not just you. Even Junko can."
But he was immediately interrupted. Monokuma's face appeared on every monitor in the academy, and his laughter seemed to be coming out of every speaker.
"I could have kept pretending to be that ultimate hacker, but it's boring to impersonate someone who doesn't even exist. If this keeps up, I'll lose my identity and turn into Konokuma."
Yoko looked up at a surveillance camera and addressed Monokuma directly.
"You seem to give up pretty easily." "There isn't a bear anywhere that gives up as easily as I do. Regardless, I'm pretty sure Chihiro has figured out the secret of my control program by now. But just as I thought."
Oh, that's Yoko. So just as I thought, you included that program on purpose. Yoko realized something when Mukuro told her about Junko. There were 2 reasons such a hateful person would intentionally leave an obvious clue inside the Monokuma units. Either Junko wanted the students to learn the truth about the outside world and themselves on their own and turn their hopes into despair, or she was looking forward to that clue resulting in her own plan being undone, which would allow her to feel despair toward herself. She was an angel of everlasting darkness, delighting on her own despair and using it to spread despair and destruction to those around her. Why would someone like that continue to play the role of Monokuma? Actually, I set that program for... Oh, that's what's his face? Monokuma.
"Actually, I set that program for Chihiro to discover if she happened to be one of the final 5 survivors. I feel so sad and empty that my preparation was a waste, but I'm going to think about it positively. The word retreat doesn't exist in Monokuma's dictionary."
Nervousness began to grip the students as Monokuma continued talking in his relaxing, uplifting voice.
"Now then, it looks like everyone's here, including Toko, who's still tied up in her room. So let's start the heart-throbbing, exciting, special graduation exam."
Huh? The students broke out in noisy confusion, but Monokuma ignored them and kept talking.
"Don't think about it too hard. Relax. Change a lax into Oopert for all I care. I'd still be the most adorable bear around here."
Byakuya, visibly annoyed with Monokuma's nonsensical rambling, shouted, "I already know it's you, Junko. Stop this stupid game and show yourself."
"Oh my, don't you know? If you want to lure the mastermind out of her heavenly hidey hole, you need to bring a worthy sacrifice. You're not worthy enough at all. Do you really think the mastermind would show herself to your pathetic hope and despair?"
He roared maniacally, then began to explain the special graduation exam.
If you pass my exam, everyone will graduate. But if you fail, you'll be held back for a whole year. I reset your memories, give you fresh new lease on life, and you'll reintroduce yourselves at the start of the school year again. They say people's lives don't come with reset buttons, but I'm not a people. Whether it's soft resets or hard resets, I can do as I please.
Yasuhiro seemed confused, but the other students knew what Monokuma meant by reset. He was going to force them to relive their school lives once again. As Yasuhiro struggled to understand, Taka pointed at a nearby monitor and shouted,
Stop this already! No matter what you do to us, we'll never commit murder. These past few days should have already made that clear to you.
What was that?
Jumped Monokuma.
Are you serious?
Of course! No one here would ever take another human being's life for any reason.
As Taka shouted, one of the students, a pale-faced girl standing apart from the others, looked away. It was Sayaka. As she trembled, a voice popped up from behind her.
What do you think, Sayaka?
She couldn't even turn around from sheer terror, but Sayaka knew. She knew Monokuma was standing right behind her.
Do you really think that none of you will become a killer?
Monokuma leaned towards Sayaka and asked her a question only she could hear.
By the way, Sayaka, why did you go to Makoto's room when nothing strange happened yet? Did you two have an inappropriate relationship? What would your fans think if they found out you made a move on a boy by sneaking into his room? Or were you there for some other reason?
She could barely make a sound, much less scream, as her trembling worsened. Monokuma had nothing to gain by cornering Sayaka and toying with her emotions like this. He simply wanted to see the young singer fall into despair over her true character. And for that reason, Monokuma did not relent. Hey. Oh.
Hey! What were you trying to do to your close friend you've known for the past 2 years?
Her determination from last night blended with the memories Makoto had recounted and ate away at Sayaka's mind like a disease. As her mind began to rip itself apart, she fell to her knees. A clear ball flying just under 105 miles per hour struck Monokuma in the mouth with enough force to sink into his face. The speaker in Monokuma's mouth was immediately destroyed as his body rolled into a wall and stopped moving. Sayaka came to her senses and looked where the ball came flying from. She saw Leon, breathing heavily as he stared intensely at Monokuma. Yasuhiro grabbed him and yelled,
Oh, dude! Why'd you do that, Leon? That crystal ball is really valuable.
Leon had stolen Yasuhiro's crystal ball and thrown it at Monokuma.
That Monokuma bastard was trying to take Sayaka hostage. What was I supposed to do? Dude, that crystal ball cost me $2 trillion. $2 trillion! They don't even print that much money anymore.
Oh, bullshit.
Besides, if the world's all screwed up, what the hell are you gonna need money for anyway? But if it's safe out there, I'll just join the major leagues or whatever and pay you back.
Well, I could pay you back doing something else besides baseball. As those two argued, Sayaka fell to her knees.
Hey!
Shouted Leon, running toward her.
Sayaka, are you okay?
He looked at him and stared blankly.
Leon.
She had made up her mind, and she raised her head and she said,
There's something I need to confess to you later.
What? Seriously?
Sayaka was staring at Leon so intensely that he briefly forgot about the current situation.
Not just to you, but to Makoto, and the others too.
Sayaka had made up her mind to confess the sin that was weighing heavily on her heart,
but Leon seemed to not hear the latter half of her remark. He ran back to the others, slapped Ifumi and Yasuhiro on their backs, and shouted, "Alright everyone, let's ace this exam or whatever and get out of here already. There's no way I'm gonna let my happy memories of this place get taken away." The Monokuma inside the monitor responded,
Fine, fine. Now that things are finally coming to a boil, let's start the graduation exam.
Sakura, who had been outside the dormitory, suddenly appeared with some information. "The Monokuma in the hallway are acting peculiar." The students all moved to the main building to see what Sakura was talking about. There they saw 50 Monokuma standing in 2 rows along the walls of the hallway, and one standing at the very end of the hall. There was something strange on top of this Monokuma's head. An enlarged version of the escape button that Makoto had obtained from the Monomono machine. As each student took in this sight, an announcement rang throughout the school.
The bee at the end of the hall has a button on the top of its head that'll open the main entrance. You'll have 15 seconds to get to that button, and if you do, I'll let you have it in place of a diploma.
The students seemed surprised by the straightforward explanation. Only Celeste remained calm, and she asked Monokuma with a bored look on her face.
Of course, it's not as simple as running up and taking it, is it? Oh, how mean! Do I look the kind of headmaster that would interfere with his students' graduation? Forget the gunfire salutes, I'm gonna send my graduates off with some fireworks. 100 fireworks to be exact, enough for 20 seconds of hardcore partying.
The more perceptive students immediately realized what he was talking about. The bombs installed inside each Monokuma. It would explode one after the other, filling the hallway with fire as soon as time started. After
15 seconds, the me standing at the back of the hall is gonna sacrifice himself to give you guys one final firework. By the way, this probably isn't important, but that button isn't very durable.
This graduation exam was Monokuma's way of saying that he had no intention of letting anyone leave. It was clear from the explosion the students saw during the entrance exam that the halls of Host Peak Academy would be bathed in fire. Even if someone was lucky enough to survive the explosions, the burns on their body alone would enough to send them into a fatal shock. Their lungs might be completely incinerated by the scorched air before that. Even if they sacrificed one student to run through, the odds were low that they would even succeed. But there was no reason for every student to run in at once either, and a shadow of despair fell upon their faces. Nice. Very nice. Oh, okay, that's Monokuma.
Nice! Very nice! I almost want to take a picture so I have those faces as a souvenir!
As Monokuma laughed from behind the monitor, Sakura stepped forward. "I'll do it. I have only seen the explosion once, but I believe I'm capable of withstanding its power."
No!
Shouted Aoi.
You can't! Even you couldn't handle 100 of those explosions!
Sakura shook her head. "I'm the only one who even has a chance." Suddenly, Mondo remembered the motorcycle he parked inside the dormitory and said, "Hold up. That motorcycle might be fast enough to get through those explosions. I'll do it." "Don't be hasty," urged Sakura. "Even if the motorcycle is unharmed by the explosions, that doesn't mean its rider will be." As Sakura and the others continued their debate, one person stepped up toward the hallway lined with Monokumas. "I'll do it."
Mukuro,
screamed Makoto weakly. Mukuro, with her back facing Makoto, turned her head to the side slightly and gave him a small nod. She knew it would come to this. She knew why Monokuma would pose such an impossible exam. Junko's already looking forward to the next despair game. He's going to erase everyone's memories, including mine. He just wants to torment us and fill us with despair before that happens. But Mukuro knew her sister's personality was all too well, and that's why she was confident. She knew that escape button was real. Whenever Junko brought despair to others, she always made sure there was a possibility that despair would befall her instead. If the students won this gamble and made it through this horrible situation,
they would finally escape to the outside world. That outcome would obviously fill Junko with immense despair. In the same way she felt she left a clue in Monokuma's control program, Junko could not be satisfied unless she took pains to assure her own destruction. It was this quality that made Junko the ultimate despair. That's why Mukuro was determined to do it. She knew she was the only person who could stand a chance of making that outcome possible. Even if she had to risk her life. But right now, Mukuro wanted to live more than anything. She wanted to hold on to this world, a world she had no interest in previously. She didn't even know this hesitation she felt was disappointed or not. But she wanted to live and continue searching for a new path. A path where she could abandon her submission to despair, where she could accept the sins of the past and continue to live. Mukuro, who was known as a war machine, found her heart beset by overwhelming fear and anxiety. Until now, it had never occurred to her what determination was necessary to live. As if she was brushing that fear aside, she quietly said, thank you, Makoto. Unfortunately, the words she said to the boy who showed her new possibilities never reached his ears. Sakura, however, heard her and frowned as she said, "If you are planning to sacrifice yourself as an act of penance, I'll stop you with all my power." Though her words were firm, there was an unmistakable affection hiding in them. Both girls had dedicated their lives to battle, and yet Mukuro felt a twinge of jealousy towards Sakura for possessing something she lacked. Mukuro leaned towards Sakura and whispered in her ear, "What? Are you serious?" As Sakura's frown intensified, Monokuma's voice blared throughout the halls. "Alright, I'm gonna start the exam now. Ready, set, go!" There was no time for questions or objections. The frontmost Monokuma exploded, sending a roaring wave of heat throughout the hall. But Mukuro didn't look away. He began moving, powered by resolute determination. Alright, so Monokuma was really bagging Sayaka because, as I said from last episode when we were reading this, because when Sayaka showed up at Makoto's room, she was planning to kill somebody, and that person was Leon. Oh man. But she was actually going to tell the truth, like why she did what she was going to do. She's like, "I got something to tell you." Oh man, just the what if scenario. The what if scenario. Everything would have been fine. Monokuma room. As soon as the graduation exam started, the mastermind focused her control entirely on the Monokuma holding the escape button, and completely synchronized her field of vision with it. She knew what was going to happen next. She could predict what her sister, Mukuro, would do in this exact situation, where she would choose to focus her superhuman skill with weaponry. And so, through Monokuma's eyes, she watched the scene unfold exactly as she had predicted. A pointed metal bar burst through the explosions, heading straight for the weak point of the Monokuma holding the escape button. Specifically, it was aiming for the point where the bomb's detonation system and Monokuma's power source overlapped. It flew straight and true, as if it had been fired by a master archer. In order to bring despair to Monokuma, and by extension Junko as well, the super soldier known as Mukuro Ikusaba threw the pipe like a spear so it could attack the same weak point she had pierced in the nurse's office. As explosions filled the hallway until only fire remained visible, the spear's speed and precision as it soared to its target defied all human logic. But the mastermind knew. She knew Mukuro had used her power to fill the world with despair. Power was all that disappointing girl had. But that power was useless against Monokuma. The mastermind had predicted that Mukuro would put all her effort into that throw, and Monokuma caught the metal bar perfectly between his hands. The force of the throw knocked Monokuma back several yards, but the pointed end of the bar never pierced through his chest. Well, that was disappointing. The mastermind turned to look at a different monitor. She wanted to see the look on Mukuro's face when she realized that she failed to strike Monokuma. The despair of seeing the final Monokuma explode right before her eyes, completely obliterating the escape button. She wanted to sear this memory of her disappointing sister's final moments as her newfound hope sank into a dark pit of despair. On instinct, she turned her attention to the surveillance camera that hadn't been destroyed, but instead of seeing Mukuro and the others, she only saw Sakura, who looked as though she had finished launching an attack. She only thought it was strange for 1 second. But then the hopelessly powerful mastermind completely understood the situation and shifted her point of view to Monokuma. But because of that single second, Junko would feel just a pang of despair. Dang, something happened that she knew she knew what she was going to do. Oh, what happened? 3 seconds left. Amid the smoke, flames, and heat encircling the hallway, it burst through the speed of like a cannon shell. It glared at Monokuma with hot, boiling eyes that betrayed the icy expression on its face. And then, sharply, swiftly, strongly, it transformed into a living weapon that cuts through everything, revealing its true form in the Hall of Despair. 2 seconds left. Monokuma, who was still holding the metal bar in his hands, tried to move, but at that exact moment, the living weapon carved a path through the flames that appeared before him. Its body, which had never been wounded on any battlefield, was sustaining all manner of burns and injuries. But even so, it did not falter. The fire in its eyes never flickered once. 1 second left. The living weapon, Mukuro, slammed her knee into the back of the metal bar Monokuma was holding. The sharp tip at the metal bar pierced through Monokuma like a rail spike, shredding the detonator and his power source into pieces. Time's up. The 100 explosions ceased and smoke blanketed the hallway. Mukuro had dived into Monokuma and the pristine escape button now rested in her hand. She and the other students of Host Peak Academy had passed the graduation exam. It was only a small amount of despair. Monokuma had tasted it in only 3 seconds. Dang! Dang! In 3 seconds! First floor hallway. Junko. Mukuro looked down at Monokuma. He could no longer move or self-destruct. When she spoke to him, a static-filled voice emitted from his mouth. It seemed his communication function still worked.
I never expected you to do that.
He still sounded like Monokuma. It seems his voice modulator was unharmed as well.
I must have overestimated you. I never thought you'd need anybody's help on the battlefield.
When I give the signal, please launch me forward with a roundhouse kick. Mukuro whispered these words to Sakura just before the explosion started. Oh, okay, so Sakura boosted her up there like quickly by kicking. After Mukuro threw the metal bar, she jumped into the air at the exact moment Sakura unleashed a roundhouse kick. Right when Sakura's foot made contact with her own, Mukuro used the force generated by her kick to propel herself at Monokuma. Using the ultimate martial artist's superhuman attack like a springboard, she shot herself through the air like an artillery shell. Enduring intense heat, shrapnel, and blood-draining G-force, she stayed conscious as she charged through the hallway engulfed with explosions and despair. Mukuro trusted Junko. She trusted Junko to predict that she'd throw the metal bar and catch it accordingly. Then she tried to look at her face as the despair sets in. Yeah, she knew what she was going to do. The Junko Enoshima she knew would definitely do that. Although Mukuro hadn't predicted that her sister would try to kill her with the spears of Gungnir, she had a better understanding of her actions now. As Mukuro stared Monokuma in his face, all he could do was laugh scornfully.
You put your lives in someone else's hands for a deadly battle? I don't know how I feel about that. You'll always be a half-assed disappointment. I guess this time I'll say I lost because I didn't see this much disappointment coming. The end. The end.
Mukuro shook her head at Monokuma. No, you're wrong, Junko.
Huh?
If you want to talk about winning or losing, I think we lost. before we even started. Mukuro's eyes shifted from side to side, as if she was unsure of something, and she fidgeted in place as she continued to speak, or talk. No matter how much despair they felt, you didn't think they'd kill each other but the way they were before. That's why you erased their memories. They aren't like the others you forced in the past. You knew these students would never do it. That's what you believed, isn't it?
What are you talking about?
So, it's okay, Junko. I'll bring back everyone's memories someday, and I'll show you everyone's happiness. And their bonds. I'll show all that to you, fill you with even more despair. Mukuro nodded after she said this, as if to cheer her sister up. After several seconds of silence, Monokuma responded.
You finally beat me this one time, and that lame speech is the best you can do? You're such a disappointment! You'll never fill me with despair. It's just constant disappointment.
After pouting like a sore loser, Monokuma continued to speak in his usual tone.
But you guys will be back. And when that time comes, I'll invite you guys to a wonderful place. I found out about this fun island while I was running things here.
Monokuma's laughter filled the room before the static finally cut out, and his remains fell silent. He wouldn't be talking again anytime soon. The mastermind was already preparing a new despair to bring to the world and to the students of Host Peak Academy, Junko included. In the end, the mastermind stayed in her Monokuma persona until the very end, and Junko Enoshima never showed her face again. It was as if she resented the despair Mukuro had given her. That thought almost filled Mukuro with despair. But when she heard her classmates calling for her, she sealed that despair into the depths of her heart. From now on, she would seal away all her despair. And one day, when she can give Junko the perfect despair, she'll unleash all the despair she stored in and plunge with her sister into a dark abyss. I won't leave my little sister alone. In the end, that was the first hope the disappointing older sister had felt since she was a child. Several hours later, main entrance. Okay, so look at everybody. Everybody's just chilling there. Look at them. They're all vibing. Mukuro, are you really going to go out wearing that wig? After receiving a blood transfusion of the correct blood type, Makoto was beginning to show signs of recovering. Mukuro, holding her wig to disguise herself as Junko Enoshima, nodded. If I live as Junko, I might be able to understand her better. Despite that, Mukuro's voice still sounded like her own, as if she hadn't fully decided. And I made up my mind. While I'm out there, I decided I'll accept everyone's hatred toward me, and toward Junko. I can't die until I destroyed all the despair that Junko has spread. The damage that the ultimate despair inflicted upon the world cannot be measured in terms of money, culture, or even human life. Television broadcasts already began informing people that Junko Enoshima and Mukuro Ikusaba were the heart of ultimate despair. Among the survivors in the outside world, there are still people who hadn't even been tainted by despair yet. Regardless of the fact that she released Makoto and the others, to these survivors she was nothing more than the reason the world ended. And to the terrorists wearing Monokuma masks who continued to ravage the world, Mukuro was nothing but a traitor. He was now in the hopeless situation of being enemies with the most of humanity. But Mukuro wasn't making a big deal out of it. I'm going to try not to kill everyone who comes after me for revenge. Wouldn't it be safer just to turn yourself in? Wondered Yasuhiro. Well, you might just get executed instead. But you could live to be an old lady if your trial keeps getting pushed back. Mukuro slowly shook her head at Yasuhiro. Laws, justice, these things no longer exist. Is it really that bad out there? Maybe we should just stay in here. Byakuya glared at Yasu. Okay,
Is it really that bad out there? Maybe we should just stay in here. Byakuya glared at Yasuhiro with contempt. Ignorant idiots should just shut up. Your fate won't change whether you stay in here or not. Though he was shocked to learn the Togami Corporation had been destroyed, Byakuya continued to remain firm and proud, even toward Mukuro. You are a rare asset, continued Byakuya, so I'll let you live, for now. Depending on your actions, I may consider forgiving your crimes after I built a new world. Only a Togami could boast that they are capable of forgiving the crime of ending the world. You don't need to do that. I don't plan on just surviving. After turning away from Byakuya, Mukuro looked at the other students. Everyone was reacting in their own way. Yoko had a look of quiet preparation. Junko, having just changed back from Genocide Jack, was panicked and confused. Mukuro looked back on the 2 years she spent with them, then turned to Makoto, who shared the same memories as her, and gave him the escape button. Makoto, you press it.
Huh? Me?
I think it's better if you press it instead of me. As she watched Makoto accept the button with some hesitation, Mukuro thought about what Monokuma had said. You guys will be back. Mukuro knew that Monokuma was telling the truth. After all, the file the students needed to fully restore their lost memories remained hidden in the academy. The research notes of Yasuke Matsuda, the ultimate neurologist. His research is the key to restoring everyone's memories. Even if the students will no longer have their memories, they may be able to repair the bonds they have built among themselves over the past 2 years. But as long as their memories remain unrestored, the mastermind could still repeat her deadly plan. Although the island mentioned earlier sounded strange, the students could not turn their backs on the despair facing them. Then, let's go. Makoto remembered everything that was happening in the outside world. The boy who had chosen to remain inside the academy 2 years ago was now choosing to leave. How much did he struggle to come to that decision? But he was determined to face that despair awaiting him outside and hid his internal conflict from the others. By protecting Makoto's hope, Mukuro would bring despair to her beloved sister. But she no longer knew if the end result of her goal would lead to hope or despair. She pulled the wig over her head and hid her face with her hands. Was she smiling because hope was waiting for her? Or was she crying because her path would lead to despair? When she lowered her hands, her face was devoid of all emotion. Mukuro no longer knew what expression she would wear on her face. At the same time, Makoto pressed the escape button. A siren began to wail as the turrets retracted into the ceiling. From beyond the heavy door, a bright light appeared. An infinite number of ifs, and all the possibilities contained therein, encased the world. Accepting everything, hope, despair, and even the feelings of that disappointing girl, Mukuro Ikusaba. Yeah, and everyone's getting out. Everyone's leaving. This should have been the ending. Oh man. And out they go. That was awesome. Danganronpa IF. A what if scenario. That was so cool. I liked it. I really enjoyed it. It told more about who Mukuro was, honestly. It didn't really give out much in the game, obviously. So they had to pop it into its own little thing. That was beautiful. Danganronpa. Danganronpa IF. But hey, we did it. We read Danganronpa IF, and now we officially are finished with Danganronpa 2. As I said on the last episode, I'll probably do this mode on my own time. And yeah, I actually did this on my own time as well as I was playing through the Let's Play. I was just going through every stage and such. Not bad. Wasn't bad. But yeah, we finished, guys. We're done with Danganronpa 2. So thank you guys so much for chilling with me until the very end, solving each mystery
getting to know the characters more and oofies McGoofies. It's been one heck of a ride, I must say. So yeah. After this though, I will say I am going to, I've already made a post about it, but I am going to take a little break. I'm going to take a small break at best. I don't know how long it's going to be, but just give me some time. My stress levels and it's just, my mental and stress is at a high and a low right now. You can probably put 2 and 2 together, which one's high and which one's low. So after this, I'll have my little break, and then once I come back, we'll probably kick off the next Danganronpa game soon. So until then, guys, if you enjoyed the video, don't forget to leave a like. Also, comment and subscribe to get new feed on videos and become a member of the Cuckoo Crew today. Also, be sure to follow me on Twitter and Blue Sky so you can recommend any of the fidget games you want me to play or chat, your preference. Also, if you subscribe, be sure to tap that bell to get new notifications on videos so you'll never miss an upload from me ever again. But we're going to close the book on Danganronpa 2, Goodbye Despair, and I will see you in the next Danganronpa game that will be next in the series. I do have it too, so stay tuned until the first episode comes out after my break. So until then, thank you again for watching, and if you enjoy any other playlists, you can check out my other playlists on my channel to hold you over until I make the next video. But until then, have a nice day, have a nice night. Amateur is out. Stay safe, stay sharp, stay cuckoo crazy, and I shall see you in the next episode, or Let's Plays that I do. But until then, peace.